Instead of a quick release belt usually seen on modern divers, the instructors put 44 pounds of lead weights into
44 pounds. That's 20 kilos. Hi divers, welcome back to another scuba diving reaction video. Today we're reacting to The Diving Tragedy of Linnea Mills by Scary Fascinating. So this is going to be a bit different to our usual scuba diving accident videos. This is obviously something that's already happened and whatnot. It's quite a famous story about overweighting, why it's a problem. I don't personally know the story at all properly myself. All I know it involves overweighting, and it's one of those case studies what we always use to explain why you don't overweight divers. So I don't know what the actual outcome of this whole thing is, and we're going to find out in the video. When it comes to scary, fascinating videos, I have seen some in the past, and they actually aren't always the actual footage from the dives, often because these stories, there's not actually any evidence or whatnot for it. So the footage we were going to see in the video most likely won't match what we actually are going to have on the dive. So it's more about listening to the audio to know what actually the context is and not just relying on what we can see visually. But as always with these kind of videos, it's not to be mean to the divers involved with these stories, especially ones which are very tragic like this. Instead, we're going to use this video as a case study, and obviously I'm going to throw my expertise being a scuba diving instructor to give you any tips and tricks along the way and show you how to avoid these situations so you can have safe and happier dives yourselves, so you don't have to worry about getting into these situations. With that all said, let's jump into the video. Okay, let's press go.
Lisa Mills of Montana knew instantly when she received a call from the sheriff's department on a dark November evening that her daughter was dead. She said, the sheriff called us but didn't tell us what was wrong and said that they had to come to our house, finally saying,
I did not know she died. I heard it was like a really bad event and whatnot. It's a case of why you don't overweight people. Unfortunately, might end up in a hospital or something bad, but I did not know it was that bad. Yikes. Okay, I'm curious to know what actually does transpire then because of this.
Come to your house unless someone has died. So I told my husband that Linnea had died and we need to prepare ourselves. Arriving just after midnight, the sheriffs told them that their daughter, Linnea Mills, had drowned earlier that day in Lake McDonald at Glacier Park. Attending an open water scuba training class, Linnea had left early in the day to go to the class taught by a shop called Gold Dive of Missoula, Montana. The police said that they were investigating the incident as they believe Gold Dive didn't have a commercial use authorization to operate in the park. While the investigation brought no charges or penalties to the dive operators, a lawsuit by the Mill family and one other diver was filed against Gold Dive and the liable parties attached. The details that follow are pulled from the 112-page lawsuit that was filed in 2021 in the Missoula County District Court.
So that's kind of how this video is going to be constructed. I kind of talked about before, it's usually just evidence and he's going to recite all the information there so it's easy to consume instead of having to go through this 112-page document. But yikes, this is going to be a lot more morbid than I was expecting, so it's probably going to be a more somber tone, probably a bit more of a somber Tom than you used to, because I was not expecting it to be this dark.
Linnea Mills was an 18-year-old girl who discovered the wonders of scuba diving in 2017 while helping with marine biology projects with the University of North Carolina. Attaining her PADI open water certification after 4 dives, she later went on to dive at the Great Barrier Reef in 2018. Being the very first certification level scuba divers can get, Linnea was far from expert or even experienced.
Very beginner. I'm just going to add to that. Typically people who've just got open water certified, yes, you've got a license so you can go diving with a group without any professional supervision anymore, but it doesn't mean you're a great diver. Just keep that in mind. Usually from my experience and what I've seen from my students, it's about a dozen dives after you're doing open water courses where you start to really find your feet and be quite a more competent diver. So it does take time. It's just like any skill though, practice makes perfect, but just going straight from open water course, you are going to be basically still a novice. And it really varies from what student to student, and also where you got certified as well, from the quality of the teaching you had, from how good a diver you actually are going to be just after that course.
This incident, all of Linnea's dives had been in warm and relatively shallow dive sites. But to get her advanced open water certification, Linnea went on to enroll in the October 2020 class with Gold Dive. This specific class was to help prepare and to teach divers to be in cold waters, which is exactly what the lakes in Montana offer. While on the first day of the course there was many red flags, Linnea was excited to return for the second and final day of the course. The instructors for day 2 were Seth Liston and Debbie Snow, who were both novice divers themselves.
Wait, the instructors are novice divers? That's probably misspoken, I'm assuming.
In just more experience than Linnea herself, and Debbie, who was a newly certified instructor, wasn't even certified to teach diving at altitude or to teach diving with a dry suit on, which both pose their own unique dangers.
That's wild. So, firstly, no shade to new instructors, by the way. it's kind of industry. Most people who come into the professional kind of industry last for 1 to 2 years and leave. So it's kind of a revolving door. So getting a new instructor is never usually a red flag. Can be a bit naive though, sometimes not as experienced. And some situations what arise, they're not used to how to deal with it because they've only seen it from like the training and whatnot and from their instructor exam. But I would never use that as like a reason why they're a bad instructor. But doing courses you have not had the training for, so specialty courses like altitude, dry suit, and then just going like, oh, I can figure it out as I go along, that's worrying. Also, just from the side of things, if people want to do their specialities with you, you can't certify them. You need to. I know some dive centers, if they want to be shady about this, will get like another instructor to sign the paperwork off for them. So when you actually do get your certification card, it says you're certified by a different instructor to the one you had. That's some way people get around it, so they don't have to do specialty training themselves. But it's super shady, and just from a straight away basic standpoint, do not do courses you're not trained to do if you're an instructor. Only do the ones in your scope, and if you want to do those courses, do the specialty required to do it. Really, really worrying, especially ones which do have like quite severe things if you don't know how to do it properly. Dry suit diving, things can go wrong with dry suits. It's important that you know how to deal with them. Altitude diving has its own extra risks, which you should be aware of as a general instructor, but still, it's something that you definitely should have the extra training for if you're going to do it.
Being at a higher elevation, divers have to use more air in order to remain buoyant. If they're used to diving at sea level, they'll sink more at these higher elevated lakes.
It's also fresh water, so fresh water as well is less buoyant than seawater.
Since the dive at Lake McDonald was scheduled for late October, which is a colder period up in Montana, the instructors told Linnea and another student, Nathan Dudden, that they should wear dry suits for the second day of the dive, and suggested that they buy the suits from a local shop the day before the dive.
Okay.
Dry suits keep divers warm by maintaining an envelope of air around the diver, but in a descent while water pressures are increasing, divers need to add more air into their suit to compensate for the pressure. Divers need to be properly trained on how to do this, or the pressure can push in on the diver, changing their buoyancy and squeezing the suit around them, restricting their movements, or even worse. Linnea bought a used custom dry suit from the suggested shop, but didn't receive an important special hose and connection needed to inflate the suit.
Oh no. I already know what's going to happen because of that. That's like so important that you can inflate a dry suit. You can't. It's one of those. It's not like, oh, we can wing it. Like that needs to be there. If you can't, as you kind of pretty well explained it, so I don't have to do so much myself right now. But yeah, if that suit can't inflate, it's just going to get tighter and tighter, and you have a dry suit squeeze. And if you're going deeper, as it says, it's starting to the advanced course, which goes down to 100 feet or 30 meters. That squeeze is going to get really bad because you're going to be going up to 4 atmospheres of pressure on you, which is 4 times more pressure than you have at the surface. Yeah. This is really important that hose is available. So the fact they're going to probably dive without that, yeah, you can always see how this is going to go wrong.
Never used a dry suit before, Linnea wasn't aware that this was missing. On the day of the dive,
and also because the instructor's probably not familiar with dry suits either, they're probably not going to realise this is an issue either.
Instructors at Gold Dive drove Linnea and another student up to the lake for the class. The group got to the lake late, at 4 p.m., with light already fading, and found that Lake McDonald Lodge had already closed for the season the previous day. There were 2 other students already waiting, Bob Gentry and a 14-year-old kid named E.G.
Just going to call out really quickly. Pretty sure 14-year-olds are too young to be in this group, because again, another red flag basically appearing right now. A 14-year-old should not be in an adult scuba group, it's still a junior diver at that point.
As the group was gearing up, the instructors then discovered the air tank regulator they rented to Linnea couldn't be connected to her dry suit due to the missing hose mentioned earlier. Instead of canceling the dive, the instructors told Linnea she could use her inflatable buoyancy control device, or BCD, to keep herself vertically positioned.
Wrong advice. That's not the actual issue of not having that dry suit inflatable. Again, this just goes back to some point. New instructor, so a bit naive, probably not aware of this, and she's not speciality trained for dry suits, so she doesn't realise the big issue of them not having this inflator hose, or what the consequences could be of not actually being able to do so. They're just thinking, oh, well, it's going to make it harder for buoyancy control. Well, just use your actual LPI, your main BCD to do that.
They didn't know is that Linnea's BCD was set up for use with her wetsuit and not the heavier dry suit she rented, which also complicated things. Furthermore, instead of a quick release belt usually seen on modern divers, the instructors put 44 pounds of lead weights into
44 pounds. That's 20 kilos. That's actually an insane amount of weight. I'm just fathoming that. That's so much weight. Wait a second. Actually, I've got some weights near the beach. similar to that. 1 second. So this dumbbell here is a 15 kilogram dumbbell. Not flexing at all, I'm just saying this is one of my ones I work out with. And this is a 5 kilo weight you can slide onto it. So this is 1 second. Yeah, there you go. Away. That's 20 kilograms. That's a reasonable amount of weight. Jesus. Actually got a little bit. I wasn't expecting it to be that heavy, that 20 on one arm then. Yeah, that's an incredible amount of weight. Just for like a reference, by the way, if you're not sure how to weight yourself for a dry suit, here's a fun little rule of thumb what people go off if they're trying to guess it for someone. Typically it's about 10% of your own body weight, and then maybe add a kilo on, maybe add or two. This kind of comes down to nuance of your different physiology, and the best way to find out is obviously on a dive, do a buoyancy check at the end of your dive to finesse how much extra or how much less you might need. So let's just use myself as a kind of example here if you're not too sure. I'm a reasonably average kind of size guy. I'm 5'11", 181 centimeters, and I weigh 80 kilos, which is about 175 pounds, I believe. So I don't want to use 8 kilograms for a dry suit. Maybe throw an extra kilo, just if I wasn't sure, so 9 kilos. That's still less than half of the amount she had. She had double the amount I would use myself. And again, she's a 18-year-old girl. She's going to be smaller, most likely, than me. So she probably even had triple the amount she needed. It's just insane that much extra weight she's carrying. That's just, I can't fathom that much weight. Like, how did the instructor think that's the correct amount? Like, there's bad at math and there's bad at math. Like even they should be able to figure out them for themselves. Like, well, I probably use this weight, so you should probably choose that. Like, I just don't get how you grossly mess up that much. Like, it almost is intentionally trying to just anchor this person so they're going to sink like an absolute rock when they're in that water. Combined with a dry suit which won't be able to inflate, so that's just going to squeeze super fast on them. I can just see how this is horrifying this is. But I just don't get why would you give someone that much weight. I just can't fathom that. That's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, we'll continue.
Pockets of Linnea dry suit and BCD to compensate. Just put 44 pounds of lead weights into the pockets of Linnea dry suit and BCD to compensate.
So not even on a weight belt.
6 entered the water at 5 p.m. without...
Actually, that's quite important that it's not on a weight belt. So there's no quick release. So they're literally in the pocket, so they're harder to get rid of and remove actually from her. So which is plummeting, trying to get... There's no like you can just drop the weight belt and get rid of this weight off her. She literally has this really cumbersome way to try and get rid of the weight. Oh god, this is like a perfect disaster. Like everything's gone in the way to make this as wrong as possible.
At 5 p.m. without receiving any safety briefings or discussing the pertinent details of the dive.
I'm sorry I keep pausing a lot, but these details are insane. They skipped the safety briefings, so they didn't do any checks properly, they didn't go over what everyone else is doing, make sure everyone's set up correctly. That negligence is absolutely ridiculous. You need to be doing this stuff. This is critical stuff to make sure, oh, this way you can catch these problems and you're like, oh, okay, well, Linnea's actually not got a weight belt on, guys, so just be mindful of that. So her buddies aren't going to be aware about weight drops because they're just going to assume, oh, weight belts. So when they see her sinking, potentially, they won't be able to help her as well, I'm assuming could be the issue. On top of that as well, just realising, oh, there's no hose connected to her dry suit. Oh, what could that potential issue be there and stuff? It's just, maybe hopefully one of the students could flag that could be an issue if they realise. But no, it's just, skipping safety briefings just insanely, grossly negligent in my opinion. I will just say from an instructor's side of view, just try and play devil's advocate right now, it might scream an issue with the logistics. And what I mean by that is, when you do the advanced open water course, it comprises of 5 dives, and usually it's split over 2 days, and I think it did say this is day 2. So she might have done 2 dives on day 1, or 3 dives on day 1, and now she's got two separate dives. All I'm trying to say is today she should go and do at least 2 or 3 dives. So if they're running behind schedule, and they still got to go do 2 more dives after this, and they've got to do a surface intervals obviously in between those dives, especially because they're deeper dives, they are probably thinking, oh god, if we're rushing here, we are behind schedule. Well, we did safety briefings the other day, so we can just gloss over this. We don't have to worry about it so much. The instructor's probably thinking. And this is why this has happened. This is just an assumption, by the way, but I can just kind of see how these things snowball and whatnot. Inexperienced, they're a bit stressed, they want to have a good rapport with the dive centre, so they don't want to be like, oh, we ran over time, so now we're finishing late today and all these other things, or we're going to have to do an extra day of diving because I was only able to complete 2 dives today instead of 3 dives today. I can see that kind of being a potential issue. Not saying it's a good thing, but I'm just thinking it probably is a mess up on the logistics side of things, and again, reflects probably on the instructor being a bit naive and not as experienced.
Snow took Linnea and EG down to about 15 feet. This
That's about 5 meters.
lasting for about 5 minutes before EG indicated he was cold, fearful, and struggling. Snow, seeing this, motioned for EG to follow her back to the surface. Leaving Linnea where she was to wait for her return, the instructor didn't notice.
She left the students down underwater on their own. No. Oh dear, this is... Ugh. You can only do that if you have like another professional with you. Say you had a dive master assisting you. You'd be like, hey, dive master, just watch the students for me while I have to sort this out. That's fine. But if you don't have that supervision, you just need to bring her back up with you. You don't do this. You don't leave students unattended. Even if it's in the shallows. If anything goes wrong and you're not there, not good.
At this point, all of the air had been squeezed out of Linnea's dry suit. Having dropped off EG, Snow was joined by the other instructor, Seth Liston, and they returned to Linnea and the other students to further explore downward. While we do have eyewitness stories from those who were on the dive, one student did have a GoPro mounted on their chest and recorded the whole ordeal go down.
Do we have footage?
The group moved down to a final depth of 60 feet before they saw Linnea.
60 feet, so that's 18 meters. So this is open water depth limits. Obviously, if they're an advanced course, so they can go beyond that. But they are getting deeper now. Just to keep that in mind.
Struggling. She was standing on an underwater ledge, and everyone could tell she was trying her hardest to breathe and to simply move. Being 60 feet below the water meant that the pressure was double that at the surface.
No, it's not. 60 feet is 18 meters. So on surface, it's 1 atmosphere pressure. 10 meters, it's 2 atmospheres. At 20 meters, it's 3 atmospheres. So 18 meters is 2.8 atmospheres of pressure. So it's almost 3 times the amount, not double.
Linnea's dry suit not being set up properly.
So what I'm trying to say is it's actually worse. It's worse than what he's saying right now. There's no wonder why she's struggling to move. And again, she's not even trying to inflate a BCD, or she doesn't have the motion skills potentially to inflate that BCD to get her neutrally buoyant. She's literally just standing on this ledge because she can't move.
At this depth, the suit was highly pressurized and was crushing her. She tried to kick to the surface but couldn't overcome the weights in her pockets and the lack of buoyancy that held her down. Swimming nearby, it is seen that Debbie Snow didn't even look at Linnea once during this panic.
You can't be doing that. Especially on descents. This is absolutely ridiculous. The amount of negligence from this instructor is baffling to me right now. Like, everything what you could do wrong is almost being wrong. So, just from my own experience as instructor right now, descents are the one time you focus the most on your students because you want to make sure they're getting down smoothly. It's often people have problems equalizing their ears. They could have some buoyancy control issues. They're not descending right. They have certain things off. So you kind of like always like looking between each student going, you, okay, yeah. You keep checking on them, giving the okays to them. You okay. It's that time you really focus on. Once you get to depth, make sure everyone's at neutral buoyancy, and then you do more of a leading the dive situation. That's when you start to look at them only periodically. You don't have to keep your eye on all the time because the hard part's down. Getting them down is the harder part. The rest of the dive's a bit more smooth. Obviously, under caution, I have objectives to do for different adventure dives. But yeah, that time when you're descending is the time you really be focusing on your students. So the fact that she's not paying attention to her, or any of the students really at this point, is really worrying, just as a general kind of rule as an instructor.
Frantically signaling for help, one of the other students, Gentry, saw this and immediately swam to her aid. Linnea, in a frantic signal, was gesturing so hard her movement spun her backwards off the ledge she was standing on, and she rapidly began to sink. Her eyes wide with fear as she reached for Gentry, who finally caught her at a depth of 85 feet, where the
85 feet. That's like 25 meters, I want to say. So she's gone from 18 meters to 25. So that's 7 meters difference in depth. So almost another atmosphere of pressure you got to remember on her. So she's almost getting now to 3.5 times pressure on her body compared to the surface. So she's going to get really, really tight squeeze. She's going to be very uncomfortable. This is awful.
Where the pressure is 3 times that at the surface.
3.5.
Linnea struggled even more to breathe as her body was literally being crushed. Gentry worked for over a minute to try to save Linnea as they continued to sink, but he couldn't find the lead weights to drop them.
He's a student, isn't he? So it's actually not even the instructor right now who's come to save us, it's another student. This is ridiculous. And just as I said, he's looking for the weight belt. He's not aware because they didn't do a safety briefing, so he doesn't know that she's not wearing a weight belt. So he's now trying to find this non-existent weight belt so he can't get rid of those weights. All the while she's probably sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. I don't know how the actual max depth of this lake is, but this is just...
Linnea went on to lose her air regulator, forcing Gentry to share his emergency one with her. At this high of pressure, with it only rising, he knew that they were both running out of air, and in a...
So keep in mind, obviously, at depth, so 85 feet, so let's say 25 meters, you will breathe your air gas 3.5 times faster than you would at the surface as well. So you're going to get through that a lot faster. However, her losing her regulator, I feel like you could just retrieve that for her. It's just a temporary fix. Obviously, great, give up your alternate. But you can still go and retrieve her regulator for her and put that back in her mouth. It's not that you need to be sharing air the whole time right now. But again, he's not rescue trained. He's not going to be perfect. He's just another student on his advanced course. So he's not going to know how to properly handle a situation. He's just going to do the best he can do on a bad situation right now. So the fact he's doing as much as he is right now, fair play to him. But he's not qualified to handle this situation, and it's not really on him to be doing this. The instructor who's present is meant to be ensuring safety of the students on the dive. They are supervising. So it should not be on him. So poor guy having to deal with this and try and just do the best he can.
effort, Gentry tried to heave Linnea upward, but simply couldn't lift her. He was forced to leave her behind and went for help.
No. You basically just have to just drown at that point. Let's just go over what you could have done instead. The thing I would have tried to do, if you can't access the weights, is obviously try to inflate to like help them ascend. I assume even maybe depending on the style of BCD, there should be enough lift to counteract that kind of weight, hopefully. So if he inflates her, inflates himself, and makes contact, or tries to get her to hold on to him while he's in charge of both the LPIs, is probably a better way of doing it. Then he could try to like inflate them up. It might even just be power inflating a bit, so it might be rapider than you expect. But it's at least going to get you out of the water. And it also, because he probably is wearing a dry suit, from what I understand, you could also inflate that dry suit to give extra lift as well. That's the best situation. Obviously, he can also kick with his fins as well for extra lift. But yeah, leaving her was the wrong call here. Especially, I don't know if he put her regulator back into her mouth or not. It's not clear. But it literally is just kind of like saying, bye, you're kind of just be left to die. Again, not rescue trained, so he doesn't know how to deal with the situation. So not exactly his fault. But just if you are in a situation like this and someone's stuck down there, you feel like they're just so heavy they can't move and whatnot, the best thing to try and do is inflate the BCDs and also your dry suit to get you out of the water. Yeah. And obviously, remember when you are ascending, remember to keep breathing in and out and exhaling. You're never holding your breath, so you're not going to have a lung overexpansion injury. On top of that as well, keep an eye on your computer if it's beeping or not. So if you are ascending too fast, let some of the air out the BCDs so you can actually have a safer ascent rate to reduce the chance of DCS. But yeah, I'm not. It is just one of those unfortunate situations. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to go help from someone more experienced and qualified to handle this. But it is kind of like signing her off for death potentially here.
Up from 105 feet in less than a minute.
105 feet, so the beyond depth limits. 100 feet is the max for advanced open water.
Couldn't locate anyone at the surface. After Snow eventually got to him and heard Gentry's story, she dove back down to look for Linnea but was unable to find her. It took a second dive with Seth Liston before they found Linnea 127 feet below and returned.
127 feet, so that's almost 40 meters deep. Jesus. It's pretty deep. And as I say, they know, unfortunately, when it's a second dive, if they can't find it immediately, it's a find the body situation. Time is really of the essence with these kind of missing diver situations. I believe it's only 6 minutes of no oxygen, and you then have a very high chance of brain damage. It's one of those situations like it's going to be very, very bad. So you know what kind of condition you're going to be looking for depends on how much time's been left where they are on their own and probably out of air. So it went from the point of her immediately going down the instructor that, okay, I might be able to save her before she gets brain damage. And then second dive was like, we're just going down to find the body, which is such a horrible thing to be thinking about. Especially when you're the person liable for it, because like you were the instructor who was responsible to look after these people. I can't imagine how awful that would feel. And like, the weird part of me here is thinking, hopefully this instructor learns from it and becomes better from this and whatnot, or maybe they just get scarred from it and leave the industry completely. I don't know what the outcome of this instructor is, but yeah, I can't imagine being in their shoes right now because that's just crazy.
Her lifeless body to the surface. The coroner was told by Janine Olson, the owner of the dive shop, that Linnea was witnessed by a dive.
Oh, this is the footage from the previous video we looked at.
To panic and then fall passively to the bottom of the lake after swimming without difficulty at a depth of 40 feet. As a result, the medical examiner didn't note the...
Wait, let's play it back. I think they said a different story to actually what happened then.
The coroner was told by Janine Olson, the owner of the dive shop, that Linnea was witnessed by a dive buddy to panic and then fall passively to the bottom of the lake after swimming without difficulty at a depth of 40 feet. As a result,
That's not what happened, though. That's not what happened. What the heck? I hate when dive centers trying to cover themselves by doing this and change the story. Obviously, if computers are in place, they can check the dive profile and it will eventually come to light that that's not what really happened and transpired. And obviously, from what we know now, because of context, this clearly does come out that this is a lie, what the dive center says. But often they do try to immediately cover themselves, like, oh, no, this is how it happens and whatnot, just to avoid legal action. But damn.
The medical examiner didn't note the bruising on Linnea's body caused by the dry suit squeeze and other issues caused by the high pressure. Janine also allegedly called Gentry to later say that he was responsible for Linnea's death.
No.
Janine also allegedly called Gentry to later say that he was responsible for Linnea's death.
You did not pin that on the student. You are the reason why he died. It's the instructor's fault in big time, not the freaking student. That makes me so mad. That dive centre sounds so shady. I can't. You hear about cowboy dive centres who do these dodgy practices, or people have died in their dive centres and they try and cover it up and whatnot, or they just like have a quiet firing of the person, just tell them to leave the country or whatnot with the instructor. There's definitely some stories I know about it in Thailand with situations like that. But just hearing about that is just, it's disgusting.
Linnea's family have subsequently became friends with Gentry and invited him to Linnea's memorial. Going on to say, we haven't had a chance to thank him publicly. We want to publicly acknowledge what he did. He's quite affected by what happened, and he's such a sweet man. I'm
so glad that the family realised, no, he tried his best to save her, and he's not qualified to do so, so it's not his fault, and they appreciate his efforts. Again, I imagine Gentry probably also had to get some therapy after this, because that would be pretty traumatic to deal with.
Attorneys David Concannon of Sun Valley, Idaho, has worked on many cases related to scuba diving. Concannon said he'd never seen such an egregious case, going on to say that PADI is named on the lawsuit due to the fact.
Is that a type of lawsuit? PADI. Wait, Paddy? I didn't realise what it was when he said PADI. I was going to be laughing right now, but that's so funny. Tell me you're a non-diver about you call him PADI, not Paddy. I was like, what's a PADI case? That's interesting. I've never heard of it. It's like is that the type of like thing this is? I was thinking like something like deaths. It's like a personal accident death or something like that. Death incident. I don't know. But then I was like, no, Paddy. It's Paddy. That was really jarring then hearing it called PADI. Okay? Question for the comments. I know this might be a little bit off topic. I'm trying to lighten the mood. I'm trying to come up for air a little bit here. But have you ever heard someone refer to PADI before, or you like me only ever heard referred to as Paddy? Like, I got certified by Paddy, and so I always have heard it as Paddy. It's not even like I'm pretty sure people call it Paddy. Like, no, I've been to Paddy dive centres. I've been to a variety of different agencies, but I've definitely been to Paddy once before, and yeah, it's never been called PADI. Weird.
The PADI prides itself on its programs and merchandise, but doesn't hold the members of its retailer and resort association accountable. Instead, the RRA members get incentives to sell more certifications and to employ more instructors, which can lead to some cut corners and chances taken.
I'm going to translate that. Paddy's saying basically we're not responsible for our dive centres or our instructors. That's completely separate. All they're responsible is to sell our merch and make us money, because Paddy stands for put another dollar in. Just kidding, Paddy. But no, I get the kind of thing. They don't obviously be associated with divers, especially because if you strictly follow Paddy standards, this shouldn't happen. They should have done their checks. They should have done the safe diving. Paddy's like, no. Just because they're cutting corners, that's not on us. As I think it's going to be hard to try and get Paddy attached to this, unfortunately. It's one of those ones where it's really on the instructor here, and possibly the dive centre for not actually doing a job of due diligence and making sure that instructor was competent enough to do the course. Because, again, she was doing stuff which was beyond her scope anyway. The issue's going to be more with the dive centre instructor, not Paddy itself.
Going on to show that if a shop breaks the rules, PADI doesn't inform the public that the shop has been expelled from the program or decertified.
Because bad PR.
In Linnea's, the gold diving instructors weren't fully qualified and failed to follow the myriad of safety practices and guidelines touted by PADI. But this wasn't the first time that Gold Dive had broken the rules.
Oh.
In July of 2020, according to records, Ellen Hubble sued Gold Diving in the death of her husband Jesse, who drowned.
They had another freaking person die at the dive centre. I've not heard of a place having multiple offences. Like, you hear about this one place that have it one time and it's really tragic and there's massive gross negligence and whatnot. Usually these dive centres get rebranded afterwards. They change the name or change hands just to kind of cover things up and whatnot, and obviously change the staff. But no, having multiple issues at one dive centre where people have died. That's absolutely ridiculous. I'm curious if Gold Divers, what's it called, still exist, or if they have changed their name just to avoid any further actions or issues, because their reputation must be trashed by now.
Canyon Ferry in June of 2019. Jesse, who hadn't scuba dived in more than 25 years, wasn't certified, but Gold Diving still rented him equipment, and it was later found that Hubble's regulator was on backwards.
What the heck? So sounds like he's done a try dive or discover scuba dive 25 years ago, so he did it one time, and he just goes, oh, can I get gear here? So bit wrong on him, but that's where as a professional you're like, well, where's your license? Which they probably clearly didn't check that you had a license. So like, oh, okay, just here's the gear, have a blast. And as it says, his regulator was not put on backwards, so he didn't set up his equipment properly. Oh my god. This just shows gross negligence massively. Not just on the instructor side of things now, but also the dive centres. It's both parties now. Can't believe how negligent this whole thing is.
While the Hubble case was still ongoing and hadn't gotten far by the time Linnea had interacted with Gold Diving, there was no way for her to know about the Hubble case, as PADI doesn't release this information. The Mills and Gentry...
And also probably hadn't been broken to the public yet or whatnot, because it'd be still going through the courts and whatnot, so...
In Gold Diving of Mozilla, the owners, David and Janine Olson, the instructors, Debbie Snow and Seth Liston, as well as PADI worldwide, for $12 million.
I feel like trying to attach Paddy to it's probably going to make it less successful, but if you focus it just on those, again, the people in charge of the dive centre and the instructing involved, you probably got more success. Paddy will just generally wash their hands of people if they know their broken standards and not following what their rules are. They won't have their back. And usually liability insurance won't cover you either if it's been very clear and there's evidence showing that you have not followed safety standards and are acting on a grossly negligent way. So I'm curious to see what the outcome of this is. Typically, from what information we do have here, they should be able to sue them. Probably not for the full 12 million, probably won't be able to attach Paddy to it, but the actual dive centre, yeah, sure.
June 10th, 2021, in a sad miscarriage of justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office informed National Park Service Special Agent Curtis Kennedy, who investigated this case, that it would not prosecute dive instructor Deborah Snow or any of the others involved in this tragedy.
Why?
Questionably saying, it appears Snow was negligent and perhaps grossly so in several respects. Specifically, your investigation indicates Snow did not ensure Mills had a functional dry suit with appropriate placed weights, and she failed to continually supervise Mills during the dive. However, Snow's negligence did not rise to the point of being criminal. Snow reported that she had no specific concerns about Mills being able to successfully complete the dive, and Snow did not know what had gone wrong.
It's negligence, though. You are meant to be the person looking after safety on the dive. That's ridiculous. I get there's like a thing, it's not intentional murder or whatnot, but it's still like manslaughter or some... Again, this is where I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the legal reasons, but from what I can understand here, I'm amazed she got away with this. That's absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's just so negligence. That's crazy.
The medical examiner that conducted Mills' autopsy determined she died of asphyxiation by drowning. The letter continues. The witness statements and video from the incident shed some light on the events of Mills' drowning, but we cannot establish that it was Snow's knowing conduct that caused her death. Accordingly, we are declining to criminally prosecute Deborah Snow. The letter, signed by U.S. Attorney Leif Johnson and Carla Painter. The family in turn responded to the decision by the U.S. Attorney's Office by saying, "We have grieved the loss of our daughter since the day she left this earth. Now we grieve the loss of fairness, justice, and competence in our public officials who are charged with keeping us safe. This is not only a loss for Linnea and our family, but also for the citizens of the state of Montana. We respectfully ask U.S. Attorney Leif Johnson and his office to take a more careful look at all the evidence with the objective advice and assistance of medical and diving professionals who understand what it means, and to consider bringing charges against any and all culpable parties under any and all applicable criminal statutes. As it stands now, Deborah Snow will not be charged with so much as a parking violation for causing the death of our daughter. This is not justice. Bringing absolutely no charges to anyone in this case is truly a travesty and unjust, to say the least. We hope the Mills family and all those affected by Linnea's passing are able to know that we stand behind them and feel that the negligence shown by the diving instructors and the Gold Dive Shop certainly deserve charges to be brought to a jury. Linnea was a novice diver and trusted people who she thought had her well-being and safety in mind. Little did she know she put her safety in the hands of those who had little more experience than her and were in over their heads. True. This is a great reminder to never blindly trust those who you know little about. In closing,
I think that's a bit of sweeping at the end then. I'll agree with that in over their heads. But say don't trust any strangers, like, that's kind of like say don't go diving with anyone because everyone's a stranger until you get to know them. So I think that's a bit too much of a reach at the end there. But yeah, it's one thing, definitely do your research on dive centres you go to and also the instructors you go to, ask some questions, find out if you feel things are right. You kind of just get a vibe sometimes though as well, even if you aren't as qualified as them. You just know when things are off, or things feel like they're skipping out, things they're cutting corners. Usual red flags as well, if the diving's cheaper there than other dive centres in that area by like a reasonable margins, usually a good telltale sign that they're cutting corners or cutting costs and not doing things properly. So yeah, this is all kind of getting, there should be some red flags here and there, and I think we definitely found some red flags sooner. So that's what should more go off rather than just like, well, they're strangers, so I can't trust them. Because I think there's a lot of people you can't trust in the world if they're just like, oh, I don't know them yet, so I can't trust them. That's for them to kind of make you trust them from being professional, doing things properly. So that's what I would kind of say more so, and you have to kind of feel it out from vibes. Reviews are a great source of things as well. Obviously, this dive centre's probably got terrible reviews now if people have died there. I'd imagine so anyway. We'll look at it for this dive centre as well after this video. But yeah, I'd say that's a better way of thinking about it rather than just all strangers are bad.
We want to say rest in peace to Linnea.
Yeah.
She left this earth way too young, and from what her journal writings show, she was an excited and intelligent young woman who had a full life to live and many more smiles to give her family. Finally, please tell your loved ones that you love them today, because you never know when it will be the last time you're able to do so.
Good message. Do that, guys.
And that is the story of Linnea Mills. If you want to hear more scary, fascinating stories, make sure to watch last week's video.
Good job, Scary Fascinating. Again, I do like his kind of summarizations of these kind of heavier topics sometimes, or kind of like a little bit morbid topics, but it was really good to kind of put that. Obviously, rest in peace, Linnea. I'm so sorry for the family as well that I didn't get justice here, because this could have been prevented. I think it's what I find the most frustrating about it. I'm going to have a quick look now, though. I'm first going to check Paddy's expelled divers page, because Paddy has a whole list of all the divers who they expel from the agency who've obviously broken standards and grossly so. So I'm curious to see if Deborah Snow is going to be on that list, or if she still does potentially work for Paddy. So we're just going to check that now. There she is. There she is, guys. It took 2023 though to expel her. No, so this is 6 years after this whole thing happened, then they expelled her. So I wonder if there's actually a potential other case she did. Maybe there's another issue she did later down the line which got her expelled. Because imagine if it was from that situation, it wouldn't have been 6 years later. It would have been close to the time. So I wonder if there's like another gross misconduct happens. And if there is, let me know down in the comments, guys. I would love to know about that and follow a story so we can actually learn about this. I think it's also really unfortunate because it clearly shows she didn't learn from this mistake. I think the dive centre covered themselves really well to not get sued and to cover their instructor, which is obviously very horrible for Linnea's family. But it just shows that even with lots of evidence, people get away with this bad stuff, and it's horrible. But I'm glad in a way that she's no longer teaching if she's doing this gross negligence and clearly took nothing away from this experience. The other thing I wanted to check now is if gold diving still exists in Missouri. Okay, I messed up. I kept thinking to say gold divers. It's actually gull divers. So there was a, and it's also in 2020, not 2017. I think I misheard that part. So it was 3 years later this instructor did get expelled from Paddy. But I can actually find gull divers. They actually are still active and working there, which is absolutely wild to me that this is a thing. So yeah, that's a dive centre I would personally not go diving with. If you want to go with them, go up for you. But the fact I know 2 people have died there from gross negligence, that's a big enough red flag for me that I would never touch them for rock. But if you're different, let me know down in the comments. And if you think I missed anything out in the comments, or you've got any extra information you want to share, feel free to leave a comment down below. Enjoy the conversation. If you found this video helpful and enjoyed it in any way, please give me a like. Helps me out a ton, but help other divers find this video too. And I also think you should check out this video. You're going to enjoy that one. And the box below that is to subscribe to me. You should definitely hit that button too if you like this kind of content. Anyway, divers, have an awesome and safe dives. I'm going to see you all in the next video. Bye bye.